時間啊，你哋都係上嚟學嘢啫，係咪？咁啊問問題啦。There are 5 different categories. The first category is about deep spectra. Okay. The second category is or the second and third is about young living's competitive advantage and essential oils. And the fourth one is about the future health and science technology. And the last one is about your working experience. So I really hope that we have time to cover all of them. So to start off with the first one about deep spectra, okay. Is there any other plants like frankincense that have potential to draw more plant extract like boswellic acid in frankincense square? So in Chinese, let me translate first. 就係除咗我哋星期六有聽到嘅 Frank 之外啦，有冇第二啲植物係好似 Frank 咁可以有機會提取到咁多嘢出嚟嘅咧
Alright, so the answer is yes. Next question. Okay, so actually Frank was not the first one that we played with, right? So again, this whole idea came from, when I first came to Young Living, I was really impressed that, I showed you in my presentation these 3 old nutrition products that Gary had put together and infused essential oils into them. So why did he have to infuse the essential oils into those ingredients, those products? They're all botanical products. So why did he have to do that? The reason is because, like standard sort of, most of the time if you harvest the plant, the essential oil just kind of escapes into the air, right? But there's still value there, so he put them back in. So we turned this around, right? The idea was, how do we turn this around? How do we keep the essential oils and bring more of the plant into the oil rather than the other way around? Is that good for now to translate?
Thank you. 仲寫得好辛苦，咁佢就話咧，其實 Frank 唔係第一個嘅，反而令到佢有呢一個 idea 去睇嘅咧，就係星期六嘅時候，佢咪 show 咗3個好舊 Gary 一開始做嘅 supplement 嘅，記唔記得係咩啊？咁佢就話咧，好想諗點解 Gary 當時會咁做，就係將啲 essential oil 加翻入去，咁所以佢咧就反向思維啦。佢諗翻，與其加啲 essential oil 入去，會唔會有啲嘢仲喺啲 plant 嗰度未入到去，可以調翻轉頭走翻去咧？因為我哋知道蒸餾嘅時候係將啲好嘢經過啲 steam 落去，但喺植物裏面有機會仲有嘢㗎嘛。
So this made these products very unique. Then the question is, how do we do that? Do we use organic solvents like maybe hexane or something, maybe use alcohol extract and then combine it with the essential oil? I don't think you would like that, right? We want to sort of keep it natural. We want to do something more wholesome than that.
咁咧佢就話咁我哋亦都有諗過，如果要將裡面嘅提取出嚟嘅話，可以用一啲溶劑啦。咁通常市面上嘅溶劑可能係一啲化學啲嘅嘢啦，或者有酒精啦。咁照計我哋音一定嘅會員都唔係好想見到呢啲嘢嘅，咁所以佢就揾方法，有啲咩方法又可以提取到出嚟咧？
Right. So essential oils are kind of cool because they are oils with marginal solubility in water. So they are the perfect, you can call it a solvent, but it's the perfect medium to actually extract some more of the goodness from those plants. So we're using essential oils instead of solvents. I love that.
咁所以我哋都知道咧，呢個精油係非常之厲害㗎啦，係咪？咁佢又有少少可以溶到喺水喎，咁佢就變咗一個非常之好嘅媒介，可以作為我哋嘅溶劑啦。咁所以覺得呢個 idea 好好，咁所以就試落去做啦。
Okay, so I have in my office probably 20 different deep spectra combinations that have been created in the lab, mostly by HK. You know HK, he's just so friendly, and he's kind of like a puppy. where he comes to my office and he has this big smile on his face and says, "Hey, look what I just did," right? And he shows me a new deep spectral oil, like every couple of weeks something new.
couple of weeks. 咁咧Dr. Mark 咧就話喺佢個 office 度咧，而家差唔多有20個唔同嘅 deep spectra 坐咗喺個台面度啦。點解有咁多咧？因為其實大部分咧都由我哋非常可愛嘅 Dr. H.K. Lin 咧喺個實驗室嗰度搞呢搞路整出嚟嘅。咁佢咧每隔幾個星期咧就攞住啲新嘢走入去 Dr. Mark 個 office 啊，你睇下，我就整咗啲新嘢啦。咁所以而家我哋一路研究緊好多。
So just think of some of your favorite oils. Maybe think of rosemary, think of sandalwood, even think of some of the herbs that you like curcumin. Do you think there's a possibility that there are some active principles in those plants that we can bring more out of in a deep spectra kind of method?
咁咧佢就話其實有好多我哋而家喺精油裏面你見到嘅植物啦，例如 rosemary 啦，例如有檀香 sandalwood 啦，甚至 curcumin 應該係小豆蔻喎。咁佢話咧呢啲咧裡面都係佢哋一路研究緊，裡面有冇一啲 active component 佢哋再可以抽多啲出嚟，所以任何一個植物都有可能。
Right, so we have to do our homework. So we look at the literature and we say, oh, does this plant have value that we could be bringing into an oil? And so right now it's all a lot of research. Like we're looking at the scientific literature, looking at what the active principles are in the plant, looking at the oil, looking at the chemistry, seeing if there's something more that we can bring into the oil. So this is a really good combination of creativity, research in the literature, and also involving the chemists in the lab to make sure that we can bring you something of value using this new technology.
咁佢就話咧，其實呢個係一個非常之有趣嘅過程啦，因為裡面咧包括佢哋會睇好多科學嘅文獻啦，亦都會真係去研究下喺嗰個principle 即係啲咩啊？即係嗰個係啦，喺法則上面究竟有啲咩可以做到咧？咁要睇下每一個特別嘅油啦，又會睇下油嘅一啲化學成分究竟有啲咩可以做到。咁所以佢話其實呢件事咧係好多創意擺咗落去做嘅。咁而亦都有好多化學嘅東西咧，因為即係我今次先至 I'm sharing with them that in R&D it's actually we call them scientists, but then it's actually there are chemists and also biologists and botanists, yes。咁即係我哋就總括叫佢哋科學家啦，但係原來科學家裏面都有分類㗎嘛，佢哋有化學家啦，有生物學家啦、微生物學家啦，仲有植物學家。咁所以其實今次呢一個研究係同化學家多啲關係。
Good. Okay, so I think that answers the question. Yes, there's all sorts of possibilities. So, we use frankincense, Catari to extract frankincense sacra. We can use, let's say, lavender to produce a lavender deep spectra, or we can use something completely different like we did before, right? Using orange to extract cacao. So just an awesome number of possibilities. But maybe one caveat, and that is, like, for the future, I don't think that we will see many standalone oils like the frankincense squared. Like frankincense squared really captured our imagination. We love frankincense. This is a unique opportunity. I think the future, though, of our deep spectra will be in our products, in much the same way that Gary put essential oils into the supplements, but we can do personal care as well.
咁 Dr. Mark 咧就話其實係有無限嘅可能，例如可以用薰衣草再做薰衣草啦，變咗 lavender square 啦 ，and then 仲可以用其他嘅 combination， 好似我哋之前喺年會亦都見過 orange cacao， 亦都係另外一款啦。咁所以其實有無限咁多嘅潛能同埋可能性嘅。咁但係咧，佢哋呢度咧就要講一講，佢就覺得咧喺未來如果淨係單支 咁買咧，好有機會係淨係得 friend 嘅啫。因為其他無限嘅可能咧，有機會咧係會喺翻我哋現有嘅產品裏面揾到。就正如 Gary 當年點解要將精油 oil infuse 落去 supplement 裏面，我哋都想將最好嘅嘢擺咗落去我哋現有嘅產品，所以有機會未來可能係喺我哋嘅 supplement 啊，或者喺 personal care products 裏面會見到呢啲嘅 lavender square 或者其他嘅 combination。答到呢個問題啦，係咪？好啦，好，非常好。Oh, then you actually answer the second question as well， 因為第二個問題咧就係問 deep spectra 有冇機會喺有冇機會可以再 extend 呢個 product line to you answer us already， 因為佢就話可能會喺其他嘅 supplement 啊或者其他產品裏面會有。Do you want to? Will there be more products we can expect in deep spectra product line?
Okay, so we did answer that, but let me just add one thing. I mean, I think this is so exciting, right? No, there are too many cameras here. But this is just a really cool opportunity for young living, right? Because, like I mentioned on my talk on whenever that was, you know, you have computers that have the Intel inside, right? It makes them unique, it adds value. We want, as innovators, we don't want to copy people, but we also want to make it difficult for people to copy us. So imagine an essential oils company that has this unique deep spectrum technology inside our nutrition products, our personal care products. I think this is an amazing opportunity to set us apart. And again, we've always been the world leader in essential oils. That's what it says on the building at headquarters, world leader in essential oils. And that's who we are. And we have to continue to innovate so that we can continue to be worthy of that title. I think Deep Spectra helps to reinforce our worthiness for that title.
Thank you. 咁咧，佢頭先俾打咗個比喻啦，電腦裏面咧，我唔係一個電腦人啦，裏面有 Intel 係嗰個你嘅 IT 人係咩嚟㗎 ？CPU 啦。咁咧你喺外面見唔到，但係你知道佢好勁，係咪？咁我哋嘅 Deep Spectra 咧就係咁樣啦，就係好似電腦裏面嘅呢個 CPU 咁樣啦。我哋令到其他人抄我哋變得更加難。咁而頭先Dr. Mark 亦都講過啦。我哋喺 headquarter 嗰度咧，好大隻字寫住咩啊 ？World Leader of Essential Oil， 我哋係精油界裏面嘅領導者嘛。咁所以我哋其實咧就唔係齋噏嘅，我哋真係做緊一科研係比其他人行快一步。咁而呢度亦都係令到好似頭先咁講，我哋嘅 personal care 啦，我哋嘅 supplement 啦，更加有獨特性，同埋其他人係更加抄唔到我哋咯。咁所以呢一個係令到品牌或者令到大家繼續去相信就係我哋一路係向前行嘅一樣嘢。咁所以非常非常之 exciting。OK， 好啦，the next question that I have here is kind of similar. How do you think the deep spectra technology can impact the whole essential oil industry?
Boy, I keep answering the question right before you ask them.
We did. 我哋答咗啦，呢個好啦。The next one about Young Living and essential oil. So, Dr. Mark, you joined Young Living about 3 years ago. 2 years ago. So, what at Young Living interests you the most? Young Living 有啲乜嘢係令你覺得最有趣嘅咧？係你 join 咗 Young Living 2年入邊。
Yeah, I think it's a function of my personality. If there is a black box that I don't understand, then I want to open it. So, like when I first moved to America, I had 5 children and was a core postdoctoral science student. And somebody, like I had 2 daughters who were very good at piano, and so, but we couldn't afford a piano, so somebody donated a piano that was like literally 70 years old, a grand piano, kind of cool, but it wasn't working. So I'm like, well, I'm going to pull this thing apart and fix it. And so I learned all about it. I learned I had the piano pulled out on the kitchen table. I learned how to voice the piano by like shaving the felt pads. I replaced some of the silk strings that were sort of part of the action. I learned how to line everything up, how to tune it. And so, you know, that's kind of what I like to do, is open up a black box. So far, so good.
Yes， 咁啊，Dr. Mark 就話佢當年係一個澳洲人啦，唔係當年，佢而家都係一個澳洲人。咁但係當年咧，佢有5個小朋友，帶住一家人就搬去美國嘅時候咧，係一個窮書生嚟嘅。咁所以咧，當其時咧喺冇乜錢底下咧，佢有2個小朋友學琴啦，咁學琴要買部琴啦，又冇錢，咁所以咧就接手咗一個人哋捐出嚟嘅琴，嗰個琴已經係70年嘅冇㗎啦。咁啊，要去再處理佢就拆咗件，再擺翻埋一齊。咁所以佢就話呢個係佢嘅性格，就係將一啲佢唔識嘅嘢，佢就好想去拆解佢。呢個係佢嘅性格嚟嘅。
Right. So in my career, of course, I started on the drug side. Right, on the cancer research side. And as a, you know, like, if you know pharmacologists, I mean, maybe they're not all the same, but many are like, drugs are truth, and herbs and nutrition products are not truth. They're just kind of faith-based, right? So they have this kind of little bit of prejudice.
咁咧，佢就話喺佢嘅事業裏面啦，大家禮拜六有聽嘅話咧，你知道佢係由呢個藥劑嗰邊開始啦，係做一啲同癌症有關嘅研究啦。咁當其時嗰啲研究大部分都係藥廠 sponsor， 咁亦都係覺得藥就係萬能同埋神聖嘅。咁你諗下，植物同埋補充品係咩啊？你啲打嘢行開啦，係咪？咁所以咧，佢話喺嗰個時候，佢就會感覺到，好似做藥廠呢方面嘅研究係有少少高高在上，同埋好似睇唔起 natural 方面嘅嘢咁樣。
Right, so they say, oh, you know, we have the drugs, so we have the human clinical trials, we know it works, we know what dose it is, and, you know, natural products.They don't have any of that stuff.
咁佢就話嗰啲唔係佢啊，其他嘅科學家咧，一般都係覺得，喂，我哋係有好多嘅 science back up 啊，我哋又有文獻，我哋又有實驗啊，實驗證明啲乜啊，你哋嗰啲自然界嗰啲嘢係講嘅啫，冇嘢 back up 嘅。
So I knew better.In a way, because I knew that the drugs were coming from the natural plant molecules.
咁咧，佢就覺得，咦，唔係啊，佢都覺得應該有啲唔同嘅。咁佢覺得嗰日星期六都有講過啦，其實藥物其實都係轉化咗嘅一啲植物嘅啫。
But I still didn't actually know that there were clinical studies on the nutrition and sort of herbal side. So I left the National Cancer Institute, right, as I explained, and of course that upset my mother, and my friends in the industry, in the drug industry, were like, oh boy, you know, Mark has really gone off in a strange direction here.
咁佢即係佢嗰日都講過啦，就係、咦佢毅然離開呢一個藥嗰邊啊 ，cancer research 嗰邊。嗰陣時佢都未知道原來咧呢個 natural remedy 啊或者 nutrition 呢邊其實都會有好多 clinical study 有好多 trial 去 support 嘅喎。咁當時佢毅然離開嘅時候咧，都係俾除咗佢阿媽會覺得，喂搞咩啊仔，讀咗咁多年書搞啲咁嘅嘢係咪？佢啲朋友都係嘅，就會覺得咦阿媽疏咗啊，搞啲咁嘅嘢啊係嘅。
Right, so I land in the industry of natural products, and I feel like, okay, it's time to pull out the guts of the piano. I really have to figure this out, right? And I didn't expect to find much science.
佢咧咁就好似頭先咁樣話啦，拆開個琴， 我就睇下你裏面底蘊有啲乜嘢。佢當時咧都唔覺得佢會揾到好多 science、好多科學嘅嘢喺呢一啲嘅保健品區域裏面嘅。
But by then, yes, I know I'm old. By then, we actually had Google and we had PubMed on the internet. So I was able to do a lot of digging, a lot of research, and I was actually really surprised to find that there is a ton of research and clinical studies and everything, just like in the drug world, in the natural products world.
咁咧佢就當其時已經有 Google 啦 ，Google 裏面亦都有 PubMed 啦。咁 PubMed 係一個點講咧？總之裏面你可以 search 到好多publication 啊，都 science 嘅文獻。我以前讀書嘅時候都係靠佢嘅啫。咁咧，咁佢就話啊，當其時喺做緊藥嘅時候咧，只不過係唔認識呢方面啫，唔等於佢冇嘅。咁一打開咗，跟住發現到原來都有好多文獻，有好多嘢支持呢一個natural health 啦，同埋 supplement 呢方面嘅嘢。
Right, and this is the same source that Gary used to formulate all the products that you have in the nutrition and the personal care space.
咁呢個亦都係咧 Gary 去做 research 嘅一啲方法，佢亦都係喺呢啲文獻裏面揾到好多可以 support 到點解我哋要用呢啲方法，點解要用呢啲植物去打落去。
So I did that for 27 years, and I really feel like everyone wants to make a difference. Everyone wants to be, in their own way, a force moving in the world, whether it's just for your family or for your bigger family of humans. And I really feel like that 27 years was a great career, and I was ready to be finished with that and left that and retired.
咁然後佢毅然離開咗呢一個醫藥界之後咧嘅27年，佢都一路喺呢一個保健界嗰邊發展啦，亦都幫到好多嘅家庭啦。咁一路佢都感覺非常之良好，諗住退休㗎啦，直至到。
What was the question again? Oh yeah, I remember. So then, what about Young Living? Like the question was like, what did I think about? Yeah, what interested me about Young Living? And I've got to say, Young Living was kind of like another challenge, like the broken piano. And I realized that I've been a little bit prejudiced myself. I went from drugs, a little bit prejudiced against wow, natural products don't offer much. The whole 27 years that I was doing the natural products research for supplement industry, I realized I had this mental block. What do essential oils have to offer? When my wife worked for Gary at Young Living 20 years ago, I just thought, how could you do this? You're a food scientist and you're working for this crazy oils company. And so I was also guilty of sort of the mental block.
咁佢就話咧，佢覺得嚟Young Living咧，好似要再砌過嗰部琴一樣，因為咧佢自己都覺得當年喺嗰個醫藥界睇呢一個保健界咧，都有少少有色眼鏡，係咪？有少少傲氣，覺得你真係渣啲啦，係咪？同一樣嘢，佢呢27年喺呢個保健界咧，佢睇 essential oil 咧，佢都係覺得。佢戴咗有色眼鏡，覺得呢樣嘢都係渣啲，因為佢唔了解。咁甚至咧，20年前佢嘅太太咧係一個food scientist 點樣翻食物科學家，即係總之都係科學家啦，係咪？原來佢太太20年前都係喺Young Living翻工，嗰陣時候咧佢都係覺得你堂堂一個食物科學家，點解喺呢啲咁嘅公司度翻工啊？佢都係覺得呢件事係傻嘅。係咪？咁直到佢真係而家嚟到Young Living去拆解呢個 piano 嘅時候，佢發覺原來有好多係自己嘅唔認識，自己停滯咗，唔俾自己學習嘅機會啦。
Right. So you all have your stories as to why you joined Young Living, and that was kind of my realization that due to some family things that happened. That there is so much more to life than just health and beauty. Health and beauty is important, but I thought there's more to it, and there was something spiritual about Young Living that attracted me to it. I don't know if you sort of think along those lines, but for me, it was a transition where there's something drawing me to Young Living. And when Mary offered me this position, it was kind of like Mary giving me that old piano that I needed to maybe understand. I really needed it, but I still didn't understand it.
咁咧，佢就覺得當其時會覺得，咦，係做 health and beauty 啦，即係健康同埋美容已經好足夠㗎啦。咁但係就係當其時啱啱屋企又發生咗啲事，佢覺得，咦，可能身心靈上面嗰個靈都可能有啲嘢係需要去填補喎。而咁啱嗰個時候咧，Young Living就出現咗喺佢個生命裏面啦。咁而佢覺得 Mary 當其時去邀請佢加入 Young Living 嘅時候，就好似俾咗呢個舊嘅鋼琴俾佢，佢唔明點解有呢個鋼琴，但係原來佢需要，咁所以呢個就係佢加入 Young Living 嘅原因。
Yeah. So, what did I think of Mary? We met in there's a replica of Gary's office in the sort of basement near the museum of headquarters. Have you been there? Right? And so we met there. It was kind of strange. So I'm meeting with Prasad, he's beside me, and Mary's in front of me. And my first impression, this is the first time I've met Mary Young, and she's kind of famous, right? And she just struck me as someone who was very sure of herself. She was offering me the piano, but she was a master musician, in the sense that she had this confidence, she knew what she was doing. You've met Mary. She's just that kind of person, and that really again attracted me to Young Living. There's something here.
所以咧，佢就又想講多少少咧，佢同 Mary 第一次見面咧，如果大家有去過 headquarters 咧，我哋上次 YL 30咪參觀過嗰個博物館嘅，佢就第一次去見到 Mary， 就喺個博物館度，好奇怪啊，唔係喺個 office 嗰度。咁但係佢就係話見到 Mary， 佢係好似發光咁樣，好有自信嘅。呢個女士好知道自己做緊乜嘢，好知道帶領住公司做緊乜嘢。咁所以佢就覺得又係講翻嗰個鋼琴嘅比喻啦。佢就覺得哇，呢一個係一個好犀利嘅音樂家，將呢個鋼琴交俾佢，就會令到佢自己都好有信心。佢覺得有啲嘢佢係可以做到嘅。
Alright, so I joined Young Living, and by now 30 years in the industry, years before that in the drug world, I have a lot of friends, a lot of contacts, right? And they're very interested to know, oh, what are you doing now, Mark? And I'm like, well, I joined this essential oils company called Young Living. And it was just like when I left the National Cancer Institute, people were like, the eyebrow goes up.
咁咧，佢就係話佢已經喺呢一個保健界30年啦，佢亦都有以前喺藥廠工作嘅 connection 同朋友，即係好多年喺度打滾，識埋好多人啦。咁得閒都會溝通下 catch up 下，咁人哋就會問：係媽，你最近做緊啲咩？你邊間公司做啊？咁佢就我而家喺 Young Living 咯，係間精油公司嚟嘅。咁就頭先大家見到嗰個樣啦，大家就會覺得正如佢當年去離開呢一個 Cancer Institute 嗰個樣咁樣就咩啊你搞咩啊咁樣。
So I can tell you about my first few weeks there, right? So the first thing I had to do was they gave me a team, the entire science team and product team. It's like 65 or 70 people in this team. So the first thing is I have to learn all these names and learn what everyone does, right? Oh, not just the people. Yeah, the people.
咁我哋就話佢想分享下咧，佢 join Young Living 頭嗰幾個星期嘅一啲特別經歷啦。咁佢就話一嚟到 Young Living 就接手咗65至70個同事啦，要接管。咁包括係喺做產品啦， 同埋做科研嘅團隊嘅，咁我哋要認識下佢哋啲名啊，認識下佢哋做啲咩啦。
Right, so I had a pretty good frame of reference for people and their competence, and for the lab and how good it is. Like, remember, I was running a team of like 85 people in my other company, and 4 labs. Like, we had a genetics lab and two labs in China, like a medical research type lab and a chemistry lab in Utah. I had a pretty good idea of whether or not people were good. And I gotta tell you, the lab was super impressive. The equipment was even better than what I was used to. And the people that were working there are just like gold. They're amazing. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but I was just amazed at the quality of people and the quality of science and care that was being done at Young.
咁佢話佢即係要接管呢70個人啦。咁因為佢之前嘅 background， 之前都有好多嘅同事，有80幾個同事。之前嘅公司亦都有4個 lab 佢要睇嘅。咁所以基本上佢一行入去都大約知道你啲斤兩係幾多啦。跟住又一入去個 lab 度，佢都知道呢個係龍與鳳啦，係咪？咁所以佢咧就話一嚟到 Young Living， 佢睇到我哋嘅 lab 非常非常之 impressive， 非常之 impressive， 因為覺得哇呢度裏嘅儀器啊，所有嘅嘢唔講得少喎。跟住再睇下我哋嘅人，哇原來粒粒都係金嚟嘅喎，全部都係寶庫，有好多嘅知識，同埋佢哋真係好高質嘅同事，同埋好高質嘅儀器啊，咁所以喺軟硬件上面都係非常之優秀嘅。佢一嚟到嘅時候。
Now I got a question from the front, like, oh, you mean you had to memorize the names of the oils? And I'm like, no, just the people. And there's only 65 people, but how many oils are there? Oh my gosh, there's so many more.
頭先有個問題咧，我哋有啲 confusion， 就有一位可愛精靈嘅 OCD 喺前面咧，就問：喂，你要記得晒啲油嘅名啊？唔係啊，淨係記得70個同事嘅名咋？咁你諗下已經好難啦。咁你知道我哋 Young Living 有幾多支精油㗎啦？你諗下記得啲名係咪仲難啊？
So again, the black box for me was the oils, right? I know nutritional, I know personal care pretty well. So when I get there, I'm like laser focused on the oils. And first of all, there's so many. And then I'm like, well, what do they do, right? What do these oils do? And there's so many different ones. What do the different oils do?
咁當你初嚟報道嘅時候，佢都帶嚟嘅知識係對於保健品啦，對於美容啦，了如指掌。喂，20幾30年嘅 experience 咁，掂嗰碌蔗啦，係咪？但係反而有一個部分就係好似 black box 咁，佢係唔認識嘅，就係精油啦。咁所以佢哋一嚟到見到有咁多精油，樣樣嘢都話有唔同嘅用處、唔同嘅 function。呢一個就係令到佢要去研究、要去學習嘅地方啦。
Right, so here's where I realized, like, in 100 years, I could not learn what each of the oils do. Right? I did learn some, like I said, well, what's helichrysum for? And people say, well, that's really good for healing wounds and for blood and all these other things. And then, well, what's lavender good for? Well, it's really good for your skin and relaxation. So. Again, like this idea of connecting each oil to what they do is kind of overwhelming for a new guy. And you probably experienced that too. 佢就話佢發現到佢要用100年嘅時間都唔會學得晒所有精油裏面嘅嘢，例如 helichrysum 又有啲咩用啦 ，lavender 有啲咩用啦，喺幾時要咁點樣 combine 嚟用啦。佢真係發覺呢個係好 overwhelming， 係即係覺得哇，完全係太多嘢、太多新嘅知識。咁我相信在座咁多位都明白，因為你哋都係充斥住好多知識嘅。So there are 2 approaches that I could take here, right? There's the Mark the scientist approach, which I did take. I started looking at the literature, looking at the studies that were being done, and I'll share that in a moment. But there's the other side, and it's kind of the more spiritual side, right? It's the reason why I joined Young Living in the first place. And so I want to tell you a story that's not very compliant, probably, but it's my experience on the spiritual side. I was, you want to start there?
可以啊，我答佢可以啊，咁佢就唔咁飽唔飽？
我唔知道。
咁佢就話，既然有咁多嘅資訊，佢可以用兩個 approach 兩個方法去諗住去拆解佢。第一個就係 Mark the Science Guy 係咪？我哋可以點樣用科研，點樣用佢好中意睇科學研究文獻咁樣去認識啲精油裡面嘅成分啦。第二嘅就係喺身心靈方面，咁究竟即係佢都話佢一開始被吸引嚟 Young Living 都係喺身心靈上面，咦好似有啲嘢吸引到我喎。咁所以佢就話有一個唔係好 compliant 嘅 story 想同大家分享。
Alright, so my first experience was, that really cemented my relationship with Young Living. I had on my face like this dry spot, and it was bothering me for probably a year, where I would touch that spot and it just kind of felt like a paper cut, like my skin was really thin and dry.
咁佢就話咧喺佢塊面嗰度咧有一個乾一笪乾咗，唔知大家有冇試過？一笪仔嘅啫，咁咧已經係成年㗎啦有。咁佢就話好似 paper cut 咁樣啦，又會好乾啊咁樣。
Right, so I tried, for a year or so, like moisturizers and all sorts of things to sort of, and it never got better.
咁佢又當然啊，搽下潤膚膏啊，其他嘢啦，但成年都好似冇好過咁咯。
Right, it was kind of a triangle shape, and I didn't think anyone could see it.
三角形喎，佢話嗰笪嘢係三角形，不過好彩即係應該係冇乜人見到嘅。
And then one day in the bathroom, my wife said, "What's that on your face?"
咁佢個太太有一日就問佢 ，What's that on your face? Is that after a year?
But you couldn't see it. Like I could only feel it, and then after a while you could see it. And the time that you could suddenly see it was when my wife noticed. She does look at me sometimes.
咁我頭先就剛好問佢就，你太太1年後先至見得到？我話係啊，因為佢係摸到，但係未必係肉眼見得到。咁當其時佢太太見到嘅時候，其實已經差唔多1年之後。咁佢自己都講笑話，係啊，我太太有時候會望下我咯。
So I'm like, oh, you can see it now? Yeah, I was just about actually to go to the dermatologist because I'm getting kind of concerned about this.
咁佢就話，當佢太太見到嘅時候咧，佢就話：你終於留意到啦！我其實應該諗住去皮膚科醫生度處理㗎啦，因為都成年㗎啦。
And even though I'm not a dermatologist, my science brain is telling me actinic keratosis, right? Kind of like a precancerous, not cancer, but just precancerous situation.
咁點解佢諗住去睇皮膚科醫生咧？因為咧佢嘅即係嗰個科學嘅腦嗰度就話俾佢聽，咦有冇機會可能係細胞病變或者有啲咩會影響到咧？去睇醫生穩陣啲喎。
Now I had on my counter there the oil that really was my friend that really called to me, which was frankincense on my counter.
咁喺個台面就有支 frankincense 喎。
And I thought, I wonder what will happen. So I just put a little bit on my palm and then put it on my face.
咁佢又想知道會發生咩事喎，倒咗啲 frankincense 出嚟就搽落喺塊面度啦。
Right. And then 2 days later, I did it again. Just one little dab of the frankincense on my face.
過咗2日啦，佢又係少少搽落塊面度啦。
Right. And then at the end of that week, I did it again. 3rd time on my face.
1個星期就搽3次啫，冇你哋咁狠。
And that was the end of it. It was completely normal skin after that. Never came back. It's been 2 years since.
1個禮拜用3次，已經係最後一次掂佢啦。因為之後呢個跟住佢成年嘅問題就已經消失咗啦。咁跟住呢2年都完全冇再出現啦。
Yeah, and so 2 years later, I'm remembering this experience, right? So that's kind of a spiritual, to me, kind of like there's no science that would suggest. Like I didn't read in the book, like if you have this situation, use frankincense. But sometimes the oils call to you, right?
咁咧，點解佢覺得呢個係一個偏近啲身心靈方面嘅嘢咧？就因為喺佢個科學嘅腦裏面，冇一樣嘢係咁樣講到你查醫一下，你咁樣就可以處理到呢個問題。但係佢就覺得喺個 counter 上面嗰支 frankincense 喺度同佢揮手，叫緊佢，呼喚緊佢。
So just 2 weeks ago, I'm in a conference call with Dr. Suhail from Oman.
咁啱2個星期之前咧，咁佢嗰日星期六咪講過 Dr. Suhail 係喺澳曼嗰度嗰張相見到啦。佢2個星期前同佢通過電話。
And I told him about this.
咁佢先至同 Dr. Suhail 講翻佢嗰3個嘢。
And he's very well qualified. His son is a doctor. And I kind of thought he'd say, "What? Really?"
因為佢諗住佢話俾Dr. Suhail 聽，佢就會覺得好詫異咯。嚇係咩？真係咁咩？因為佢都係一個好 science 嘅人，同埋佢個仔係一個醫生嚟嘛。
And he just said, "Yeah, I have published papers on this."
咁咧，Dr. Suhail 咧就冇覺得好詫異啦，跟住就話：哦係啊，其實我有寫過文獻關於呢啲嘢。
Yeah, like literally papers on essential oil and actinic keratosis.
佢話直情係一個文獻係關於細胞病變同埋精油咯，咪就係咁咯。
Right. So yeah, I love that Young Living kind of has room for this. It has room for some emotion and some spirituality, but also is interested in the science of essential oils.
所以咧講起嘅時候，佢好中意 Young Living 就係因為可以好有少少好神奇咁樣去講就話，喂台面支精油呼喚緊我啊咁，但係其實喺背後係亦都有好強大嘅 science 去 back up 呢件事。
So can we move into some of the stuff that I'm doing on the science side?
So you want to move on to that or
What's
move
the
on
next
to the
question?
next question? 我睇下時間。So the next question is from a science perspective, how do you explain, can you explain why you believe the use of essential oil for health improvement?
Okay, let's do that.
即係佢就話睇啦，你可唔可以解釋到點解使用精油會對健康有好處、有改善？
All right. So again, I'm coming to Young Living with kind of new eyes, right? And I've realized that it's going to be very difficult if I try to learn every oil and what they do from a healing perspective. So, as I started to examine the black box, try to fix the piano, if you will, I started from a different approach, and I'll share that with you.
咁佢就話咧，佢嚟到 Young Living 嘅時候，佢知道佢要用一個新嘅眼睛、新嘅角度去睇呢件事情，因為佢明白好難去學晒所有嘅嘢，同埋另外呢句我加嘅就係佢都唔需要啦，我哋有咁多其他嘅科學家係咪？咁所以咧請得佢嚟，希望佢用一個新嘅角度去看事情，咁佢都好想一陣會同大家分享下。
So I wanted to sort of step up a little higher and say, well, how do essential oils work in general? Like in general, like when you look at any plant bioactives, you know what I mean by that, right? An active plant molecule, like they have a certain way of talking to the human body, whether it's the food you eat or whether it's an herb. They do interact with the body in scientifically measurable ways.
咁佢咧就會想同大家講就話喺再上一層去講就係究竟 essential oil 係點 work 嘅咧 ？essential oil 裏面佢有啲 bioactive 就係一啲生物化學分子啦，你叫佢咁究竟佢喺度點去喺度做緊咩嘅咧
Right. So I had spent the previous 10 years actually looking at gene expression. I can explain that if you like. Gene expression. Genes, yeah.
佢過去嗰10年咧，佢嘅研究咧好多都係同呢個 DNA 裏面嘅基因係有關嘅事情。
Right. So the way that the way the body works is, you have to react to the environment, you have to adjust, you have to, if you're hot, your body gets a message to sweat so that it can cool down, right?
咁佢就話咧喺即係一個人體裏邊咧，我哋都要係去喺唔同環境裏邊要作出一啲調節。就例如咧喺熱嘅地方，我哋會點啊？出汗啊咁樣，咁呢啲都係。
Right. If you haven't had enough food lately, like your body tells you you're hungry, right? And there's all sorts of biochemistry that happens when your body tells you that you're hungry, so that you can eat.
咁咧，當你好耐冇食嘢嘅時候，你個身體會話俾你聽你肚餓，但係呢個肚餓嘅信息其實係嚟自一連串好多唔同嘅化學嘅裏面發生緊嘅嘢咧，總之就會去到你個腦話俾你聽，你好肚餓，你而家要食嘢啦。
Right, and when you're full, your body tells you you're full. How does that happen?
咁啊，當食飽有邊個食飽？吃飽啦，吃飽啦，係啦，有邊個食飽嘅時候，你個身體亦都會話俾你聽你飽，但係呢一樣嘢你身體點知嘅咧？
Right, so all sorts of biochemistry happens. In the case of feeling full, like you have amino acids from the protein, and then they are absorbed into the cells, but the last ones, the ones that are left behind, are the large, positively charged amino acids. Okay, we'll stop right there. Let's just say this.
但我覺得我講完咧，我都唔知大家明唔明啊？係啊。
I'll back off right now. Basically, though, I'm looking for how do essential oils talk with the body.
咁所以咧，基本上佢就喺度講嘅嘛，其實 ，Do you want to translate？ 咁咧，我少少講少少啦。咁啊，因為咧，我呢2日對咗佢好耐，佢可以講好長，我哋仲有好多問題，你會想聽其他問題。咁基本上咧，佢就係講緊。其實身體裏面咧，呢啲信息都係經過好多唔同嘅 biochemical reaction， 即係喺你身體裏面產生嘅一啲生物化學作用，傳完一啲信息，再傳一啲信息，跟住就話到俾你聽，你應該知道嘅嘢。咁所以佢好想知道嘅咧，就係話，即係頭先嗰啲咩氨基酸點樣又變咗加啊，跟住又去到邊度啊嗰啲省略咗佢先。基本上佢就想話。佢最想知道嘅咧就係 essential oil 入咗你身體之後，佢同你講緊啲乜嘢
？Right. Usually you have a molecule from the plant, and it's like a key, and then there's a receptor in the body. It's kind of like a keyhole, right? And these reactions, these interactions can be very specific. So it's like you turn on things, you turn off things with the key.
咁咧就係喺呢啲植物裏面有一啲嘅分子啦，佢就好似鎖匙咁嘅。佢去到呢個身體咧，就會去到某一道門、某一個鎖嗰度咧，就去開㗎啦。咁而呢啲就好似喺你嘅身體裏面開緊唔同嘅掣咁樣，你當佢着燈啦。
So, for example, some keys actually go right into the nucleus of the cell, and they go to receptors that are on that gene, and they turn it up or turn it down. That's one very basic way that some plant molecules can interact and change the way your body is behaving.
咁我就話其中一個好基本嘅例子就係一啲 plant molecule 啦，一啲植物裏面嗰啲分子啦，係可以咧直接入到你細胞裏面嘅核，跟住之後喺裏面你啲 DNA 喺裏面，嗰個核就係裝住啲 DNA 啦嘛，係啲 bio 嘅糖翻嚟啦，係咪？嗰啲 DNA 咧就係可以再喺嗰度開鎖嘅，咁就會可以影響到嗰個細胞裏面之後發生嘅事啦。
Okay, so I'm gonna cut a long story short because I'm just looking at all these different mechanisms and wondering how essential oils work, and in the literature there's all sorts of information about how they are affecting the human body.
咁佢就話佢其實好想知道晒所有嘢點樣 work， 但係原來發現喺文獻裏面咧有好多都已經講咗話，咦呢啲精油係點樣去影響身體或者喺身體裏面產生變化。
And this is different to my first impression of essential oils. My first impression of essential oils is it's aromatherapy. And so you smell something and it creates an emotion and it's very subjective and you can't really measure it. So, that's what it's all about.
咁佢話呢一樣嘢咧係令到佢好詫異，因為佢第一個對精油嘅印象係點啊？第一個對精油嘅印象就係香薰啦，香薰就係你聞咗啲香味，然後咧佢會舒緩你嘅情緒，但係呢一樣嘢咧係量度唔到，因為每個人都會唔同嘅。
And then I read a science paper published in the literature that showed that smelling a certain essential oil changed the metabolic profile in a group of women. And I thought, change the metabolic profile? That means it changes the biochemistry of the body. That's not just in the mind, something is happening. If the essential oil can change the biochemistry of the body in a measurable way, then it's not just aromatherapy anymore. It tells me that those molecules in the essential oil are somehow entering the body and interacting with the cells.
咁咧佢就話會睇過有一份啦，或者一啲嘅文獻咧，就係講緊話一啲味道啦，可以去轉咗一啲女士嘅 metabolic profile， 即係佢嘅新陳代謝嘅事情。咁佢就話：咦，既然係咁，即係話味道係可以轉到你身體裏面嘅一啲生物化學作用嘅，就唔係好似佢一開始諗淨係 aromatherapy， 淨係香味咁簡單啦。咁所以喺呢一方面令到佢好想再研究究竟同個身體有啲咩關係。
But this was a huge turning point for me because I'm seeing that essential oils can cause a measurable change in something more than just how you feel or how you remember.
咁呢一個咧，對於佢嚟講咧，嗰個影響係好大，因為佢一開始覺得精油係聞咗係舒服，每個人都會唔同。最緊要係咩啊？佢唔知道原來可以量度到嘅。咁而呢一個嘅文獻，呢一個嘅研究話到俾佢聽，原來精油味道係可以做到一啲做到一啲可以量度到嘅事情出嚟。
So you guys knew this already? Did you guys know about that? Okay. Well, I can dig it up for you. So, for example, if you smell citrus oils, the studies show that it lowers a stress hormone called cortisol. You know that, right? That's amazing to me.
咁咧佢話大家都知道啦，即係如果聞一啲骨子類嘅精油會點啊？係會可以幫助你減低壓力嘅荷爾蒙 cortisol 啊嘛，皮質醇啊嘛，大家都知係咪？對於佢嚟講，好新穎。
So I'm also amazed that, like Gary would say, hey, some of the oils work if you just like put them like near the liver or on the feet or some other place. And again, I thought, yeah, I don't know.
咁咧，佢亦都知道啦 ，Gary 係會教大家，音咧譬如會教大家將啲油搽喺啲肝啊，搽喺腳板底啊。咁對於一個科學家嚟講，就係頭先個樣啦，佢就I don't think so.
Right, but not all scientists are closed-minded. I've learned by now that I can be open-minded about things. So I'm looking for the essential oil receptor interaction. And I've found it in a place that seems obvious in the nose.
咁咧，佢就話唔係所有科學家咧都係墨守成規，咁讚緊佢自己，好 open mind 啦，係咪？咁咧但佢都係要一啲 science 嘅 backup 嘅，咁所以咧佢會好想研究一啲嘢係可以證實到出嚟，係可以 repeat 到嘅。咁所以咧佢就話：咦，會唔會有一啲喺身體嘅receptor 即係叫咩接收器啦，係喺個身體嗰度可以接收到精油，喺邊個地方揾好啦？不如喺個鼻度試下揾啦。
Right. So when you smell something, actually something incredible is about the human body. You have nerves that go from the brain, right? You've got all these neurons that are in the brain that helps you to think. And those neurons, you think, well, they're inside the head. But in the nose, there's the olfactory receptors are nerves that are actually hanging out in space. They're in the air. Back there in the back of your nose, there's all these thousands of little nerves, neurons, that are in space waiting to be stimulated.
咁佢就話，大家都知個腦裏面好多事情發生緊，咁一啲 neurons 啦，咁就係一啲即當佢發射信號嘅東西啦，係咪？神經元 OK， 神經元喺度發射緊啲信息出去啦。咁原來咧，除咗喺個腦之外咧，喺個鼻嗰度咧，佢都揾到一啲神經元係等待接收信息嘅喎。
And I actually became interested in this around the time of COVID because a lot of people started to lose their sense of smell or their sense of smell became distorted. And I wondered about that and learned that some viruses, not just the COVID virus, but other viruses, they can interact with those nerves and kind of mess them up, confuse them so that you can't smell.
咁佢喺咩時候開始對呢件事有興趣咧？就係 Covid 嘅時候咧，大家都有聽人講過話，喂，會突然之間聞唔到嘢係咪？咁咧佢就係發現，咦，原來係有機會，唔係淨係 Covid 嘅，其他嘅病毒都有機會咧，係會令到喺你鼻腔裏面嘅呢啲神經元啦，接受神經嘅接收器啦，係會縮咗嘅。
So when you smell something, let's say you smell fish, there are these odorants that come from the fish, and there's probably dozens of them, and they find their receptor, and there's 389 different receptors there in the nerves. So some of those odorants will find their receptor, and then the olfactory bulb is like this little computer that says, this much of that, this much of that, this much of that. You are smelling fish.
咁佢就係希望我可以翻到呢 part 啦。咁咧，佢就係講緊，譬如我哋聞緊魚嘅時候咧，咁魚其實有好多唔同嘅呢啲味道嘅根源、味道分子啦，我哋叫佢好唔好？咁呢啲味道分子咧，去到個鼻嗰度嘅時候咧，就會揾翻鎖匙嚟噶嘛，揾翻佢哋啲窿啦。咁原來咧喺呢個鼻嗰度咧係可以有389隻唔同嘅鎖匙窿啦，係咪？咁我要揾翻。咁而呢啲鎖匙窿收到唔同嘅信息之後咧，就會上到去你個鼻上面嘅，你當係一個 computer 啦，一個 CPU 咁。收完之後佢就話：我收到有幾多個係呢個窿，幾多個係呢個窿，加埋之後呢個就係魚嘅味啦。
Right, and then what happens? That olfactory bulb turns those receptor molecule interactions into electrical signals that go then into the middle of the brain, into the amygdala.
咁咧呢啲咁樣嘅着咗燈之後咧，喺個 CPU 裏面咧就會再 send signal， 再 send 啲 signal 去到你嘅 amygdala， 即係杏仁核裏面啊，你個腦裏面。
And the amygdala, that part of the brain, is actually very central to memory, to motivation, to fear, to perception of time. Like, all of those things are very close to where that signal goes for the sense of smell.
咁咧喺呢個頭先講嗰個杏仁核裏面咧，佢就係會處理你嘅情緒啦，處理你嘅恐懼啦。令到你更加有動力去做嘢 motivation 啦，同埋咧係會令到你知道時間嘅。咁所以你諗下嗰啲嘅 signal 發射到去你嘅腦嘅呢一 part， 其實係做緊啲咩咧？
So the sense of smell is quite unique because like if you touch something or you see something or hear something, it doesn't go to that part of the brain that's very central.
咁咧佢呢一個味覺咧。同埋觸覺視覺好唔同嘅地方就係你用視覺或者觸覺咧係刺激唔到你嗰個杏仁核裡面嗰個位嘅，係味道先至可以做到。
Alright, so meanwhile, I found out that one of the scientists that reports to me does not live in Utah, he lives in Japan. 咁
咁啊，其中有一個佢嘅下屬啦，同佢一齊工作嘅人啦，就唔係住喺 Utah， 住喺日本。睇下邊個啊
Dr. Wu。Dr.
Wu。Dr.
So I'm like, oh, Dr. Wu, I better call him. I'm your new boss, right?
佢就話：原來我有一個下屬係住喺呢個日本沖繩嗰度嘅喎。咁啊，作為一個新嘅上司，我都禮貌上打個電話介紹下自己啦。咁佢就打電話俾佢啦。
And then I'm asking him like, what are you doing? What research?
咁作為一個上司，佢就會問佢啦：喂，你做緊啲乜嘢研究啊？而家？
Right, so first he told me, well, I'm on the farm here in Okinawa. I'm not really a farmer, but there's nobody else to do the job.
咁佢就首先話：我而家咧就喺呢個沖繩嘅農場嗰度啦。我其實唔係農夫嚟嘅，不過冇人做，咁咪我做咯。
Right, and then I'm like, what are you growing? He says, well, I have shell ginger. I have 2 kinds of shell ginger, and I'm doing all this stuff with shell ginger.
咁我就話我種緊呢個月土咯，咁仲有好多唔同嘅嘢咁去介紹緊月土究竟係啲咩嚟㗎啦。
So he told me about some extracts that he's making and how he put together this black ginger product and other things.
咁啊，佢又講下佢究竟呢個shell ginger 點樣去做㗎啦。咁另一個產品就係大家用緊嘅 black ginger PMF 啦，咁亦都係 Dr. Wu 個團隊研究嘅。
And then he told me about this other project that made me interested straight away.
I think they understand.
Okay. He said, Mark, did you know that in the olfactory receptor there are 389 different receptors?
咁啊，另外佢講咗一樣嘢，非常之令到佢有興趣，就係Dr. Wu 問Dr. Mark 就話：喂，你知唔知喺呢個鼻腔裏面咧有389個唔同嘅接收器啊？
And I was like, tell me more.
咁佢就話講多啲俾我聽。
And he said, well, we have developed a cell culture method where we now have a cell that represents each of the 389 receptors.
咁佢就話咧：喂，我哋而家喺呢度咧去發展緊研究緊咧一啲唔同嘅 cell culture 咧，一隻碟嗰啲啦，咁咧就可以分開呢389個唔同嘅 receptor。
Right, and discovering these receptors was quite recent. Linda Buck is her name. Have you heard of Linda Buck? She received the Nobel Prize for discovering these odorant receptors in the nose, just not all that long ago.
咁咧呢一個鼻腔裏面有呢啲接收器咧，其實係一啲好近期嘅研究，有叫 Linda Buck 咧，咁佢係最近仲攞咗呢個諾貝爾獎，唔記得邊年啦，咁但係好近期嘅一啲研究嚟嘅，就都係研究呢方面嘅事情。
So I was really surprised that Dr. Wu was sharing with me that he had this technology with all of the receptors, and they were special cells that basically when the receptor is occupied, it lights up, right? There is a special kind of a cell that has like ATP and firefly butts in there. I'm serious, like it's the enzyme from the firefly butt in the cell, so when it's activated, it lights up.
係啦，咁啊基本上咧，裡面有細胞啦，佢佢裡面咧係有螢火蟲着燈嗰啲嘅汁液啦，你當佢，咁跟住之後咧，當嗰個味道嚟到嘅時候，佢嗰條鎖匙插得啱咧，就會着燈㗎啦。
Right, so he showed me some maps. Basically, it's like 389 little squares, and when you have the cells and you maybe wash shell ginger over them, all of the odorants from shell ginger will bind to their receptor, and then you get like this pattern that is basically a map of what your nose sees and your brain sees when you smell shell ginger.
咁咧呢一個嘅新嘅科技或者測試嘅方法咧，喺Dr. Wu 嗰度咧係點樣做咧？就係當你當有一張紙巾有 shell ginger 嘅味道啦，咁樣抹過去嘅時候咧，嗰啲嘅鎖匙咧就會揾到啲鎖匙窿。去打開嘅時候會點啊？螢火蟲就着燈咯喎，咁呢啲咁嘅格仔咧 排咗出嚟咧有389個，咁基本上你就可以睇到究竟 shell ginger 係可以着到幾多個唔同嘅燈，亦都話到俾你聽。我諗着咗呢個 pattern 就係好似頭先咁嗰條魚啊，係咪着咗呢個燈嘅就係 shell ginger 啦。
So we are together mapping what your brain sees when you smell lavender, when you smell shell ginger, when you smell synthetic lavender versus real natural lavender.
咁所以咧，佢就話你呢個基本上係可以好量化，或者你可以用眼睛睇得到着燈，就係話咦究竟你個腦接收到啲乜嘢嘅味道咧？即係味道將佢變成一個形象化嘅事情。咁就可以見到，咦 lavender 原來就係咁嘅樣嘅。頭先講個 shell ginger 咁嘅樣嘅。咁如果我哋聞一啲假嘅 lavender，又係咩樣㗎？呢個就係個腦可以話俾你聽。
And the next step then is to link it to human behavior, right? Maybe depression or anxiety or stress. So now we are starting to decode what the brain sees, which receptors are activated, and how that is associated with certain kinds of behavior.
咁下一步咧，知道着咗燈，知道係條魚，知道係 lavender 之後咧，下一個步驟佢哋而家做緊嘅一啲研究咧，就係話，我哋而家會希望將呢啲着燈同行為扯上關係啦。即係話，如果我係有depress 啦、憂鬱啊或者點樣嘅時候，究竟啲燈會點轉變咧？如果我聞咗啲精油，或者我做到啲咩嘅時候
？So it's answering some other questions as well. For example, I told you I was doing gene expression research, and when you do that, you look at the cells and you see which genes are turned on. And sometimes you ask the question, well, what was turned up and what was turned down?
咁咧佢就之前有講過啦，佢其實係做好多 DNA 啊，或者係呢啲genes外來嘅刺激物，令到呢啲基因有轉變、有上有落，係咪？咁所以呢樣嘢係佢好研究、好想、好在意一樣嘢。
And sometimes I found that a gene was activated in a strange place and I couldn't explain it.
咁有陣時佢就會發現嗰個基因突然之間會有轉變，但佢解釋唔到點解。
So here's where it gets interesting. When I read some more about olfactory receptors, that's what they're called, right? These receptors of smell. It was actually Linda Buck who discovered that these receptors are not just in the nose. You know this, right? They're in the heart, they're in the liver, they're in the adipose tissue. They are all over the body. And it's very interesting to me that these receptors for odorants that you normally smell are in the tissues of the rest of the body.
咁就係頭先講過攞咗諾貝爾嗰位啦，林德伯啦，佢嘅研究就講都有講到就係話頭先講嗰啲喺鼻嘅接收器，原來唔係淨喺個鼻揾到喎，喺個心啊，喺其他唔同嘅肝臟啊，其他嘅器官啊，其他身體部位咧都有喎。咁所以呢樣嘢係令到佢大開眼界，覺得好特別，好想繼續研究落去。
Yeah, so it's not so strange anymore when you think that Gary was saying, well, put it here over the liver or somewhere else. Now the science starts to make sense. It's not just faith anymore. It's not just spiritual, but the science is supporting it.
咁所以咧，回翻頭先幾個字之前講嘅個問題啦，佢就覺得哇，搽油喺肝、搽油喺腳板底係好奇怪，解釋唔到嘅。咁而家就開始令到佢覺得，咦，有科學根據啦，可以解釋到啦。
Right, and in English, it's called an ectopic receptor. Have you heard of that? It's ECTOPIC, ectopic.
Receptor 啦，總之係接收器嘅一種啦。
Well, the reason I'm telling you this is because, if you want to impress people with your knowledge,
點解佢咁樣串俾你聽啦 ？Okay, we'll spell it once again.
And you want to connect with people, right? That are more scientific. It's nice to have a name for it.
佢話咧，當 當你想咧同你啲 friend 傾偈嘅時候，覺得自己叻啲啊，拋書包嘅時候咧，掟啲名詞出去，呢個就可以掟啦。
Let's try to find the word together in Chinese. So let me explain where that word comes from. Like when a woman gets pregnant, sometimes the egg is fertilized in the wrong place. Right? When the egg is fertilized like in the fallopian tube instead of the womb, that's called an ectopic pregnancy.
宮外孕啦，係啦，佢就話即係喺嗰個懷孕喺一個錯嘅位置，就係叫宮外孕。
Right? So ectopic is kind of Latin or Greek that means the wrong place.
所以 ectopic 嘅意思就係喺錯嘅地方。No.
No problem. Ectopic, good English word. So yeah, I think that we're doing. I don't know if you knew this, but nobody else.
異位咯 ，yeah,
So,
yeah, it literally means
there you go.
wrong place.
Yeah. So did you know that we were doing
It's
this?
okay.
Because actually nobody else is doing this. Like none of the other essential oil companies, nobody that I know of is doing this research. And, of course, my job as the head of science at Young Living is to make new products and to reformulate the old products, right? That's one of my jobs.
咁咧，佢就話我哋去研究呢啲嘅東西咧，即係橡燈啊、螢火蟲呢啲咧，冇其他嘅精油公司做緊呢啲類型嘅研究。咁當然啦，佢作為公司裏面嘅Head of Research 啦，咁其實佢嘅工作之一就係要去做一啲新嘅產品啦，亦都會將一啲舊嘅產品再改良做得更加好啦。
And we make good products and we make amazing oils because we want to be a force for good in the world. We want to change lives, make people healthy.
咁咧，佢好相信嘅咧，我哋已經有好好嘅油，我哋做緊啲好好嘅產品，都係令到呢個世界嘅人活得更加好，可以令到大家更加健康，係咪
But it's also a business. Is that a dirty word? It's also a business.
咁佢話，但係亦都係一個生意嚟嘅，即係雖然唔係個個好中意聽呢個字，但係一個生意嚟嘅。
Right, because if we don't sell the oil, then we can't run the farm that makes the oil, right? So we have this relationship between the corporate and you, the brand partners. You're sharing the oils with your friends, but they don't get them for free, otherwise we can't make them.
咁咧，雖然呢個字唔係咁好啦，但係我哋要知道嘅就係，我哋都需要有一啲收入嘅來源，我哋先可以繼續 run 到啲花，繼續種到嘅精油出嚟。咁所以點解有咁好嘅精油，唔係同你哋嘅關係好好，亦都唔係俾你去派精油出去，係咪免費派出去？咁我哋就生存唔到啦，係咪
So how do we attract people to us instead of the other guys that are copying us? How do we do that?
咁我哋究竟點樣可以吸引一啲人嚟 join 我哋 Young Living， 就唔係去另外一間抄我哋嘅公司咧？
Right, so I'm probably answering some other questions early, but we have farms and we talk about our farms and we have all natural and pure and good chemistry. We talk about that.
咁我哋有我哋農場啦，呢個自家農場係一個非常之特別同埋獨特嘅事情啦。咁另外一樣嘢係咩？我都聽到啦。除咗 other than farms, we have science， 係啊 ，scientists， 係 quality 亦都係一個
Right. And other companies also say that they have that. So sometimes it's hard to attract people away from the rest.
咁我哋話自己品質好啊，第二啲公司都可以話佢品質好。咁所以喺呢度上面咧，其實我哋都係可以做一啲 test 嘅話，可以去話QC 嘅話，其實大家都係差唔多。
So that's where my other job comes in. The other job that I think I need to do and Young Living scientists need to do is give us really good innovation street cred or street credibility. Does that make sense?
咁所以佢就話，所以咧呢個就係佢除咗係做好產品之外，佢嘅 side job 啦叫做，就係去做呢啲科研，做呢啲研究，令到 Young Living 繼續係喺呢個精油界裏面係一路前進緊，一路做緊一啲新科研，一路有呢個 credibility， 即係嗰個
So you wanted me to tell you secrets, right? And but this is not so much. There's a lot of secrets, but really it shouldn't be secret. We are doing amazing research that nobody else is doing. And why are we doing that? Because I haven't described a product yet. But what we're trying to do is help you to be proud of the company that you represent. And if you are proud, then you have passion, more passion than just selling products. And if people can see that in you, they see your passion, and actually you tell the stories. Like, do you know what we're doing in Okinawa with all the factory receptors? People see this as a company that has a future, that is doing amazing things. That's going to help your ability to be a force for good and also help with the business.
咁啊，頭先我哋嘅 RCD Maggie 有講過，可唔可以分享啲秘密啊？咁啊乜就唔係咁睇係秘密，佢覺得咧有啲嘢係要同大家去分享嘅，因為佢覺得呢啲咁嘅科研咧，如果大家聽得明嘅話咧，咁其實係公司係真係好厲害，佢希望呢啲咁厲害嘅科研啊，呢個 science 嘅團隊可以俾到信心你，可以俾到你可以出去同人講嘅時候，有更多嘅話題，有更多嘅嘢可以同其他人分享，就係話，喂 ，Young Living 其實做緊嘅嘢唔單止淨係我做緊嘅嘢唔係淨係賣支精油俾你咁簡單，而係我代表嗰間公司係好有誠信、好有將來，亦都係希望可以俾到你哋一啲話題啦，或者一啲 passion 啦，可以當你哋去分享 Young Living 嘅時候，有更多嘢可以講。咁呢個都係佢做緊科研，其實都係為緊你哋去諗嘅。
Yeah, is that a good place to end?
我有好多問題，我哋今日暫時唔收問題住。咁咧，I also want to ask this one is what is the biggest challenge to human health in the coming 10 years？ 喺未來10年，佢作為一個科學家或者做咗咁多年嘅研究，佢會見到未來10年喺健康方面最大嘅挑戰會係啲乜嘢
？There's a few places to go, but I'm going to go one place. I think it's becoming mental health and stress. Do you agree?
Yes.
Like, yeah, we have physical issues too, but man, everyone seems to be feeling the stress and the mental health issues. In America, I volunteer for my church, and as part of that volunteering, they have like big groups of people that go to church who are young and single. And so I was kind of responsible as a lay sort of religious person to look after this big group of young single adults.
咁佢咧就覺得有好多幾個範疇咧，佢都覺得係想講，不過佢想揀一個嚟講，就係佢會覺得係一個 mental health 同埋即係咩啊 mental health， 即係佢嗰個精神啦，同埋喺嗰個精神健康同埋喺壓力上面，呢一個係一個好大嘅問題，亦都見到未來嘅趨勢。喺裡面嘅嘢，唔係話喺身體表層見到嘅嘢。咁佢就話佢喺佢個教堂嗰度啦，咁就會去做service 啦，佢會去做義工啦。咁佢嘅工作咧就係去睇住一班又後生啦，又單身嘅成人啦。
Right, so these young people are very different. Like I was their age in the 80s, and it just seemed like we didn't have a care in the world. Everything was great. But these young people who are really smart, they're going to college, but they are very open about the fact that they are struggling in some areas of mental health, depression, stress. So I think it's a worldwide issue, and I think that Young Living has the answer to a lot of this.
咁佢就話頭先講到話，佢要睇住呢一班後生仔啦，係咪成就仔女啦？咁佢話，當佢係呢啲人嘅年紀嘅時候，係80年代左右，佢就會覺得好似冇嘢㗎，好開心，做乜都得。咁但係佢話調翻轉嚟睇而家嘅年青人，佢哋都係有好好嘅學歷，佢哋都係讀緊大學，但係佢哋會做好 open 咁樣去講話我覺得我有啲憂鬱啊，或者有一啲心理上或者精神上嘅問題，佢哋亦都好處就係佢哋好肯願意攞出嚟去講嘅。咁佢就特別覺得 作為 Young Living 呢間公司，其實我哋係喺呢個界別裏面，我哋仲有好多可以發展或者可以幫到佢哋嘅空間。
So people that were kind of laughing at me a little bit when I left the nutrition industry and came to Young Living, right? It was kind of a little bit of a joke. They're not laughing anymore. When I tell them about the research that we're doing at Young Living, they are amazed. They're like, what? I had no idea that there was such good science. And that's our mission, is to help the world to understand that Young Living has something amazing to offer to the world. It's not just faith-based, but the science, the language of science is helping those people to see that we have something to offer.
咁佢就話咧，佢即係前幾年離開咗呢個保健界嘅公司，嗰啲人咪笑佢話走去 Young Living， 走嚟精油界做乜嘢嘅。咁當佢喺 Young Living 呢幾年，亦都了解多咗，亦都真係有一啲 research 研究係佢以前唔知啫，但係而家知道嘅時候咧，佢再同翻佢以前啲朋友去講咧，嗰啲朋友唔再笑佢啦，反而咧佢哋好詫異就係、哇，乜原來精油係真係有科學根據，係有咁多研究喺出邊㗎。咁原來只係以前唔知啫，咁而家知道，咁所以佢好希望佢喺 Young Living 嘅一個工作啦，就係繼續去將精油推廣成為好有科學根據嘅一件事。咁希望可以幫到你哋啦，幫到你哋側邊嘅朋友，亦都可以去了解原來 Young Living 或者原來精油唔係嗰啲好淨係 V 混混嘅事情，而係原來有咁多咁豐富嘅科學根據。Mic drop， 佢話講完啦，非常之好。夠唔夠喉啊？唔夠喉啊？唔夠喉，they said it's not enough。
Time's up。
等我揀得一題咯，我話 one more question。喂，因為咧
I'm mindful of you, not me. I can stay here.
因為咧Dr. 話嗱，佢即係非常之好啊！佢話可以 stay 喺度 all night 啦，但係話俾大家聽，佢嚟香港之前咧，佢已經喺馬來，聽朝要搭早機去新加坡做客，真係早機，唔係講笑。咁所以我哋今晚都唔好阻佢咁耐。咁我亦都希望今日有機會一陣間可以俾大家再同佢影相。咁所以咧，我都希望留翻啲少少時間嘅。咁所以 let's choose one last question, okay? Okay, so my question would be there's a lot I want 我自己都想知道係咪啊？With the abundance of new technology and health product in the marketplace, how would you advise a consumer who cares about his or her own health to identify or choose product that suits him or her? 即係話喺市場上面，而家有好多唔同嘅產品，個個都話好勁嘅科研，有好多唔同嘅產品。我相信亦都有好多好嘅產品喺出邊嘅。咁你作為一個科學家，點樣去建議一啲好注重身體健康嘅人去選擇一啲適合佢嘅產品呢？
That's a bit of a tough one. But where I start is just go to a company that you trust, right? That's step one. Right? If you trust the company, then they're going to have products that you can trust. The other thing is like, can you ask questions? Like, is the company open to have scientists come and talk to you about those products? Do we check the box on that one?
咁咧佢就話，咁呢個都係一個幾難答嘅問題，因為好難開始係咪？咁所以佢就話，首先第一個，你一定要揀一間公司係你相信嘅，你相信佢嘅理念啦，佢嘅團隊啦。咁第二就係、你要問下呢間公司肯唔肯俾你問問題，有冇啲好似科學家坐喺度俾你咁公開咁樣問問題咧？咁我諗呢啲都係一啲好好嘅指標，係咪啊？答咗呢個問題啦，好唔好啊？好啦，咁我知道實在好多人有好多唔同嘅問題好想問啦。我諗我哋坐喺度3日 都問唔晒嘅。咁但係好希望今日喺短短呢個半鐘，我哋都喺度問咗個半鐘嘅時間，可以同大家